My dear friend who lives in the world next to mine, I have been wanting to write to you for a long time. Tonight I am sitting at a metal desk under a tired white light and I am typing this message to you as calmly as I can. In a few hours people in dark uniforms will come to take me to a courtroom, so I guess this is my version of a bedtime story. You live in a place where life is not officially a game, which already makes your world sound like a fantasy to me. Here every part of life is written inside what we call the game constitution, and everything we do is scored like a match or a mission. When I wake up each morning my wall screen turns on before my eyes are even fully open, and it shows my current, level and my daily quests. The screen lists things like complete 8 hours of productive work, maintain relationship satisfaction score, keep mood stability above target. Under there is a bright line that shows my streak, which is the number of days in a row I have met the minimum score. The streak is displayed to everyone in my profile, so people treat it like a measure of self-control and even moral value. If the streak breaks, people do not ask whether you are tired or sad, they ask what rule you failed to follow. When I step outside my apartment, a hallway lights up and tiny projectors paint numbers above each door that show the level of the person who lives there. Maybe you have follow accounts or likes in your world, but here your level is written on every surface like a name. Children learn to read those glowing numbers before they learn to read storybooks. Parents hold their hands and say things like, "Greet Mrs. Harris. She is level 72. She deserves respect." I used to think that was normal, the way fish probably do not notice water. Only later did I start to wonder what it means when a number walks into every room before you do. Our game constitution started as something people thought was very clever and modern. Long before I was born, people became obsessed with numbers and graphs for everything, and leaders were desperate for a way to keep citizens engaged. They saw games holding attention for hours, so they copied the tricks of games and attached them to work and exercise and study and even voting. At first it was small things like points for healthy eating or badges for reading books and discounts for doing online training. People liked it because life felt a little more playful and rewards came faster than slow distant promises. Over time the systems grew more complex and they started to overlap like vines on an old building. Every app and company created its own little game with its own points and status levels, and people jumped from one to another like juggling balls. Then someone powerful said something like, "This is chaos. We need one clear rulebook for all these games." That was the seed of the game constitution. The idea was simple and terrifying at the same time, which is exactly the kind of idea that wins big votes. Instead of many tiny games with hidden rules, they promised one public document that would explain how every point worked and how every level was calculated. People were tired of feeling manipulated by secret algorithms, so they chose open control over secret control. Our grandparents voted, and the game constitution became the highest law, higher than older laws and customs. It said that every citizen must have a profile, every important action must be logged, and every reward and penalty must be tracked. It sounded like fairness, like a world where no good deed would go unnoticed and no harm would get lost in the crowd. In practice it created a world where nothing could stay private or unmeasured. The Constitution is updated in what they call patches, like software releases. Each patch has a long list of changes that sound technical and neutral even when they cut into the softest parts of our lives. One patch reduced the score you get for unpaid care work because they decided people were exploiting it by visiting relatives too often. Another patch removed grief time from the score system because they said sadness was being used as a cover for laziness. There was a patch that raised the penalty for unproductive hours during the evening, and that one hit me hard because evenings used to be my safe time. Every patch is announced with cheerful music and charts that show how their update will increase overall happiness. The charts always go up and to the right, like a good student with perfect posture. No one ever shows the lines that go down inside individual hearts. Most people here tried to keep a good level because level means access. A high level opens doors to better apartments, nicer hospitals, quieter trains, even more forgiving fines if you break a minor rule. A low level does the opposite and turns every mistake into a landslide. Employers search by level first and by name second, and some never even read anything that is not filtered by a level threshold. Banks link credit limits to level and schools link placements for children to parental level. Friends show your level to each other as if they are showing photos, proud when a number beside your name climbs up a little. For a while, I played along like everyone else because I wanted comfort and respect and I was scared of falling behind. My job is in what you might call data analysis, although here it is framed as game balancing. I work in an office that reviews how people respond to new quests and how score changes affect behaviour. We look at graphs and heat maps, and we tweak reward values the way your world might change a tax rate or a sales bonus. On paper it is neutral work, just tuning numbers to steer the crowd away from crime and waste and toward healthy habits and productivity. In reality, I know that each adjustment pushes, or pulls real lives and fears and dreams. I once changed the score for volunteering at local shelters, and the day after the patch we saw a bright spike in attendance. At first that felt like magic, like writing a few digits and watching kindness bloom in the streets. But the more I watched, the more I noticed something else. People started to come to the shelters with their eyes fixed on their wrist displays, checking how much they'd gained already and how much more they needed. Some stayed only until the progress bar filled up, then they left in the middle of conversations or tasks. I saw an old woman reach out a hand to keep someone a bit longer, but the volunteer looked at their wrist and hurried away to keep their streak. Compassion had become a timed challenge in a seasonal event. Love is also inside the game. Dating profiles show not just simple interests but also synergy scores and projected couple level gains. The system predicts how two people will perform as a unit and even calculates the combined score of future children. Breakups are registered as party disbands, and if the relationship lasted long enough they are marked as quest failures. After my last breakup my phone displayed a message that said Major Life Quest failed and then offered a list of micro-quests to rebuild my confidence score. There were suggestions like call 3 friends, attend a social mixer, and rate your mood every hour. The system tried to turn my pain into steps and tasks and points, and there was something very efficient and very cold about it. I remember sitting on my couch with tears on my face while my screen told me that my daily emotional balance was still within acceptable range. I wanted to shout at it that acceptable range is not the same as a living heart. Children grow up with quest lists too. Their school days are stacked with experience rewards for test results and behaviour scores and group projects. Teachers use dashboards instead of simple notebooks and praise the children who keep their lines smooth and rising. Some children learn to play the system the way expert gamers play leaderboards. They choose subjects not because they love them but because the score gain over time is higher. They pick friends who add bonus points and avoid friends who carry penalties. You can imagine what that does to children who are slow or strange or simply unlucky. In our world kindness is taught, but optimization is learned even faster. So far this might sound like a sad but stable world, a place where people trade freedom for order and call it progress. The reason I am writing to you is that I did something that our system cannot easily measure. We call it my 0 day, although the official name in my case file is bigger and more complicated. One night after a long week of work I sat at this same desk and stared at my wall screen and asked myself a simple question. The question was, what would my life look like if I made choices that did not give me any points at all? It was a small question and a huge one, and it felt dangerous right away. I decided for the next day I would try to live in a way that did not change my score. No quests, no appointments, No check-ins, no scans, nothing that could be logged. You may think that sounds easy, but here it has become almost impossible. Our buildings are covered in sensors and our cards and phones and clothes are all connected to the game. Every ride on public transport logs a little movement quest and every purchase triggers a consumption log. Even sitting in a public park is counted as a mood regulation activity and gives a tiny wellness reward if you stay long enough. To have a 0 day, I needed to escape all of that. I called in sick, which already gave me a small penalty, but I accepted that as my starting point. Then I turned off my phone for the first time in years, not to restart it but truly power it down. I dug out an old jacket without sensors from a box that belonged to my parents and I put my regular card in a drawer. I took cash from a small envelope and I walked out of my building by the service stairs instead of the main lobby. The cameras still saw me, of course, but they did not catch a card swipe or a quest scan. That day felt like walking through fog and sunlight at the same time. I wandered into parts of the city where people rarely go because the game does not give many points there. Shops were old and quiet, and some did not have digital signs or score leaderboards on the walls. I bought a snack with paper money and the cashier squinted at it like it was a fossil. Without my phone telling me what to do next, I noticed small things like the way dust moved in the air and the shape of a crack in the side of a building. I helped a stranger lift a heavy box onto a cart and no notification popped up to praise me. We just nodded to each other, and the moment passed, simple and complete. I had forgotten that help could feel like that. For a few hours my score did not move. Back in the office they must have seen a gap in my logs, but gaps happen sometimes when systems fail, so no one panicked right away. I spent the afternoon by a small river where the city forgets to be loud. I watched the water and thought about how games always try to give clear goals and how life used to be messy and open and slow. At sunset I went home by the same hidden route, put my old jacket away and turned my phone on again. The device woke up with a rush of backlog signals and then froze for a moment as if it needed to think. When the screen finally lit up it showed a long red warning I had never seen before. The warning said that my data pattern for the day did not match expected activity for my profile and level. It said that low transparency days increase system risk and destabilize predictive models. There was a strong suggestion that I should schedule a correction session with a coach to review my engagement habits. I laughed at first because the language sounded so stiff and polite, but there was a cold knot in my stomach. The next morning 3 people from my department called me into a small meeting room with no windows. They were not angry, at least not in the usual way. They were worried about the integrity of the game. One of them asked me kindly whether I had experienced a mental health event. Another asked whether my account had been hacked or borrowed. When I said no and I told them what I had done, the room became heavy and silent. From that day on my life went from easy mode to something like a hidden boss fight. My level remained the same, but things around me started to shift. My work tasks became harder to complete because new quests kept appearing in my queue with vague goals. The system flagged me as a volatility risk, which is a category for people who might deviate from expected behaviour. My friends received subtle alerts that spending time with me could lower their stability scores. Most of them never mentioned it, they simply began to cancel plans and to respond slower to my messages. A few brave ones sent me quick notes asking what had happened and whether I was in trouble, but even they kept our meetings short and always in high-score locations. There is nothing like seeing fear in the eyes of people who love you to let you know that you have touched a live wire in your society. I could have apologised and promised to never have a 0 day again. I could have told the review board that I had been exhausted and confused and that I would follow my quest list like a good citizen. Part of me wanted to do exactly that, to slide back into the warm numbers and the clear goals. Another part of me, a part that felt the river and the weight of that simple box in my hands, refused to say that the day had been a mistake. I told the board that I had felt more human on that day than in any level gain I had ever achieved. I told them that I did not want to live in a world where every action needed to be a move in a game. You can probably guess that this did not go over well. Officially, I am charged with something called systemic undermining of engagement integrity. That phrase means that by living a day off the grid and by talking about it openly, I encourage others to do the same. If enough people acted like that, the game models would break and the game constitution would lose its power. The obvious question is why a system that is supposed to serve people is so terrified of being ignored. The answer is simple and sharp. The game does not just measure life, it is the main way that resources and rights are distributed. If people walk away from the scoring system, the entire structure of power begins to wobble. While all of this was happening, I also found a small group of people who had been quietly experimenting with their own versions of 0 days. We met in an old library where the scanners were broken, and we left our phones shut in boxes in a back room. There we talked in low voices about what kind of life could exist outside the game. Some wanted to abandon the system completely and build small communities with almost no technology. Others thought we could keep some parts of the game but give people true off days where no data was collected. I noticed that each plan said more about the person than about the system, which makes sense because when you remove structure, people reveal their own shape. We did not agree on one perfect answer, but we all agreed that we needed spaces where choices were not always tied to points. When the authorities discovered our group, they treated it like a virus. Our meetings were framed as conspiracies and our conversations were read as attacks on stability. I was picked out as a leader because of my job and my role in game balancing. They said that someone who understands the mechanics has a special duty to protect them, not to question them. In your world, that might sound like expecting doctors never to criticize medicine or teachers never to question schools. Powerful systems do not like it when the people who know them best begin to ask simple questions. You might be wondering why I am telling all of this to you instead of using my time to prepare a formal defense. The answer is that my formal defense is not really for the judges. The judges are high level and deeply tied to the game, and their careers depend on the scorekeeping working. I will of course speak clearly in court and I will tell the truth, but I know that the real audience for my doubts and my hope is not in that room. It is you and others like you who still live in worlds where numbers are powerful but not yet written into the highest law. From where I sit, your world sounds both softer and more dangerous. You have likes and ratings and credits and metrics, but they do not yet march under the banner of a single game constitution. That means you have more room to move, but also that the borders between game and life are less obvious. Here we know we are in a game, even when we pretend to forget. Though you might be playing without realizing it half the time. I have watched glimpses of your world through reports and signals, and I see people chasing numbers too. Influence numbers, income numbers, fitness numbers, productivity numbers, all dressed in friendly colours. I do not think numbers are evil, but I have learned that they are hungry. They always want more space, more attention, more of your heart. Maybe you can do something that we did not manage to do. Maybe you can enjoy some of the small games without letting them define who you are. When you choose a task or a hobby, you can ask yourself a question that we forgot to ask in time. The question is, would I still do this if no one ever saw the result and no number ever changed? If the answer is yes, then you have found something real. If the answer is no, then you are probably feeding a system rather than feeding your soul. There is another lesson from my world that I want to share before my time runs short. When every action has a clear reward or penalty, people stop learning how to make choices in uncertainty. We become good at following game logic, but bad at sitting with doubt and moral tension. Real life often asks you to choose with incomplete information and with no guarantee of praise. If you train your heart only on clear rewards, it forgets how to act from conviction alone. Some of the bravest acts in history were zero-score acts in the moment. No scoreboard flashed for them, no progress bar filled up. Yet your world remembers them because something inside other humans recognized their value. I hope you keep telling those stories. I do not know how my trial will end. The maximum penalty is a full level reset with behavior restrictions, which is like pressing restart on a life that has already been lived. I would lose my apartment, my job, and much of my social circle. The game would treat me like a new player with a suspicious history. Part of me is frightened almost to the point of shaking when I imagine that future. Another part of me is strangely calm, because I know that I have already tasted a different way to be alive. Once you have felt a day without a score, it is impossible to fully believe in the numbers again. If the judges decide to make an example of me, they will say that they are defending fairness and stability and safety. They will show charts about crime reduction and health improvement and economic growth. They will point to the many people who say that the game gave their lives structure and meaning. Those people are not lying. The game did help many of them. The part they will not talk about is the cost. The cost is the quiet voice inside each person that says I would like to act from my own heart now, not from a quest list. When that voice is ignored for too long, it does not disappear. It just grows inward like a root-cracking stone. You might think that my story is only about my world, but really it is about a question that belongs to both of us. The question is how much of your life are you willing to hand over to systems that promise clarity and reward? There is no simple answer, and I do not trust anyone who gives one. Sometimes structure is a blessing that keeps chaos from swallowing the weak. Sometimes structure becomes a cage that grows bars everywhere it finds fear. The people who design these systems are often not villains. Often they believe they are helping, as I believed when I raised the score for shelter work. Good intentions plus powerful tools can still lead to strange places. If you have listened this far, then our worlds are closer than the distance between them. We are two people thinking about how to live when rules and numbers press in on all sides. I do not want you to reject every system or to fear every point. I only want you to keep one small corner of your life where you can choose freely without thinking about gain. Call it your own zero space, a room inside your heart where no one else can write rules. Visit that space often, even if you only stay for a minute at a time. Ask yourself though what kind of person you want to be when no one is grading you. Soon this message will leave my hands and travel across whatever strange connection lets our worlds speak. I like to imagine you hearing it late at night with a warm drink beside you or on a quiet walk where the city is softer. Perhaps you will think of your own habits and the games you play without noticing. Perhaps you will notice the next time a number tries to tell you who you are. If that happens, then this letter will have done more than any patch I ever wrote at the office. For now, I will close this part of my message in a simple way. Thank you for staying with me through these long pages of my world and my doubts. It means more than any level or score that someone, in a different reality, has given me a piece of their time and attention. From your friend who lives in the world next to yours, with a heart that is still learning how to live beyond the game. And now, to you who are listening to this as a video, I want to say thank you for staying with my letter all the way to the end. If you enjoyed spending this time between our two worlds, please tap the like button, because it helps this strange little channel find more curious minds. If you would like to walk with me through more letters from more parallel lives, please subscribe so you do not miss the next journey. I would also love to hear what you think about my world and your own, so please leave a comment and share your thoughts or questions. If you feel moved to support this project, you can use the QR code in the corner of the video or the link in the description to send a donation to the channel. In the description you will also find links to other works from this channel that belong to completely different series, and they are waiting for you when you are ready for another trip. For now I will say goodbye, and I hope you will join me again the next time a new letter arrives from a world just one step away from yours.